Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's good to have you here for this webinar from Conservation Careers. We're here to talk about conservation communication skills. There's a real growing realization that we need to do much more to share our messages, okay, to encourage more support, to encourage more action if we're going to save more wildlife globally. And as a result, we're seeing so many more conservation employers looking for staff with communication skills. And that's what today's training is all about. It's going to be a practical, honest and supportive hour together. And we're going to include a question and answer session at the end. Okay, so if you want to hang around and ask your questions of us, we will be here to answer them as well. Now, whoever you are, we want to get to know you properly in a second, but you don't need communications background to be here. Okay, so whatever your level of training or expertise or experience of communications, you are most welcome here with us this evening. And we're going to start really by trying to get to know you a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to kind of jump over to here. Okay, so if you can kind of find the chat for wherever you are. I think most of you are probably on YouTube. We are on Facebook and LinkedIn as well right now. Okay, but if you jump to the chat and just tell us where you are, okay, who you are and where you're from. So I'm Nick and I'm near Cambridge in the UK. Please jump to the chat and tell us where are you, okay, and who are you as well. And as you're doing that, I'm going to kind of put our little things on here as well, so you can kind of see the comments dropping in. There you go. I'm going to hide that too, if I can. So as we do that, let's just introduce ourselves as well. Okay, so my name's Nick. I'm from Conservation Careers, as you know. Okay, and I've been working as a professional conservationist now for something in the region of, I don't know, 25 years or so, something like that. And during that time, I started off in science doing a PhD on barn owls. I then worked as a consultant. And then after that, I worked for BirdLife International for 3 years as a communications manager. Okay. And through that, I kind of learned on the job the importance of communication skills and the importance of the skills to really have an impact in this sector. Since then, I worked as a fundraising manager and then started Conservation Careers 13 years ago to help people like you. You might be an aspiring conservationist, a career switcher, a student, a job seeker. You might also be a professional conservationist also. Whoever you are most welcome. Let me try and hide this. There we go. Lloyd, you are our communications expert in residence, okay? It's good to have you with us. Do you want to kind of just say a little hello and an introduction and a welcome while I just try and get our slides up? There we go. That's a little bit better. We can see each other more. There we go. Hey, Lloyd.
Hey, Nick. Nice to see you and nice to meet everyone out there. I can see you from a range of places: Argentina, Brazil, the US, lots from the UK as well, Florida, New Jersey. That's amazing. So yeah, welcome. As Nick said, my name's Lloyd Gofton. I am a little bit older than Nick, so very similar in terms of time, in terms of experience. So over 25 years of experience in communications. I guess the first kind of 18, 19 of those years were spent in agencies, so communications agencies, working for lots of different brands, from huge multinationals that you all know to smaller startups, and some conservation organizations within there as well. And then I came to the stage in my career where I really wanted to find some more meaning. I really wanted to find some more purpose. And for me, that's always been about the ocean, to be honest, but more widely about conservation, wildlife. Nick was one of the first persons I got in touch with, first people I got in touch with even. And Nick very kindly guided me along, and I joined Conservation Careers in much the same way that you guys are sitting there today. I was sitting there kind of 7-8 years ago, and helped me through my process of switching into conservation, and pretty much been here ever since, working for a range of organizations. I run a research project researching cetaceans in the south coast of the UK now. I also work for a marine science organization. I've worked for conservation organizations, activist organizations, even on wildlife experiences and developing trips. So lots of relevant background, hopefully, but always with a communications background. And that's how, after many years of working with Nick, I came to become expert in residence and help Nick to develop a couple of courses as well.
Yeah, and it's been so fun working with you and sharing your knowledge and expertise with people, which is what today's all about. And welcome everyone online. I can see a bunch of people from all over the globe. We've got Jimmy from Kenya as well. We've got Edith from Zimbabwe. Welcome. Yeah, we've got Karibi from Cameroon, is that? So quite a few from Africa here this evening. That's really nice. Hannah from York. I lived in York for a long time, Hannah. I very much miss it up there. It's a beautiful area to be in. I saw some from Hawaii as well. Aloha. It's really good to kind of see everyone online. Welcome, everyone. Sophie from Florida, too. I can see there, too. I can see all your comments here. Welcome, welcome all. Now, as we kind of starting to settle in, let me just also share our screen again. What we're going to do is we'd love to know a little bit more about you as well. So first of all, as you can sort of see here on screen, you are most welcome. So we have people from all over the globe, within our audience. We serve about, 1.2 million people per year. You might be a job seeker, a switcher, a student, a professional conservationist, or even something else from many different countries. And I think I can sort of see that reflect in the comments and your participation this evening as well, which is really nice. But just to get to know each other a little bit more, okay, I'd like to know a bit more about who else is in the room here today as well. So tell me, of what you can see in front of you, again, if you can jump to the chat as well, are you a job seeker? Are you in job seeking mode right now? Are you looking for jobs, applying for jobs, hopefully getting interviews, looking for job offers? Are you perhaps a student, in which case drop student into the chat? Are you studying at university, at college, perhaps even at school? Okay, you're most welcome if you are. Are you maybe a career switcher? As you heard, like Lloyd, you're a career switcher, and now the next one, a professional conservationist. Okay, we serve many and help many career switchers. You're very welcome. Elaine, I can see you're a switcher. Welcome. I just saw, Malgoretza as well. You're welcome as well, a career switcher. Or perhaps you're an other. What is other? You can tell us if you are an other. I'd love to kind of see that too. Let me share this up so you can see. So we've got quite a few different people represented here, Lloyd. I can see a job seeker, Rosie. I can see Ivan, who's a job seeker and a switcher. Welcome. Yeah, Lucy, you're a job seeker after 14 years raising a family. Yeah, my family are all quite young. Yours are too as well, Lloyd. Busy time for everyone, I'm sure. Yeah, it's interesting. We've got quite a few switchers in here as well, like Joseph, I can see a marine biologist. There you go, Lloyd, someone after your own heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably looking for a job because there are limited jobs in marine biology, unfortunately, but I'm sure you're finding that.
Absolutely, yeah. Busy sector, yeah, absolutely. Okay, welcome everyone. I can see you all in here. Job seeker there, Sophie as well. Great, great, great. Well, whichever type you are, again, let's just sort of reflect briefly on, the types of people that we typically serve here as well at Conservation Careers. So you can see in front of us, when we look at our stats, the last few months actually alone, about half our audience, which I can sort of see in the chat there too, are job seekers. And that's no great surprise. We share around sort of 50,000 jobs per year, something like that. So lots of people, including you guys, come to our site looking for jobs. We've got a very busy job board there for you. About a quarter are students. Okay, and then the rest are split between switchers and professionals, and both switchers and professionals are growing audiences for us. We're serving more and more people who are looking to kind of switch and convert your passion and your skills and your experiences to date to find the right path within conservation and move across, just like Lloyd has done. And also, people who are professionals looking to train and to find more impact, and often more balance and well-being at the same time, okay, within your careers. Whichever represents you, as always, you are most welcome. Then our final question for you guys as well, going to the chat. How confident, tonight is all about the importance of communication skills, right, in conservation. I want to know, how confident do you feel about using communications within your career? Okay, so another quick poll. Again, jump to the chat. You can write in not if you're not confident at all, a bit, okay, if you are a bit confident, fairly for fairly confident, or very for very confident. And there is no right or wrong answer here. Just be honest. If you're not at all, that's absolutely fine. Again, you don't need any experience whatsoever to be here this evening. We're here to kind of help you to kind of progress and to build some more confidence. But be interesting to know kind of, where you're at and how you're feeling, in terms of your confidence for conservation. So I can see Lucy not, Ginger not very, fairly, Haley, Lisa a bit, Julie fairly. I've got a few a bits with Monk Seals 18. Welcome, Joanna, fairly. Yeah, it's sort of quite mixed, I would say. I'm not seeing a lot or very. There's a few varies. Yeah, Karaha, have I got that right? Maybe I've not. Yeah, Lloyd, I'm guessing you're very as our expert in residence. I hope so.
Well, I mean, most of the time, I wouldn't say I'm always very confident. In fact, I recently had experience that would put me out of my comfort zone, but we're going to come on to that in a bit. So yeah, most of the time, very confident, sometimes fairly confident.
Yeah. Well, again, wherever you are in your career, and thank you for sharing that and being honest and open with us there, and a little bit vulnerable too. We appreciate that. You are very welcome, okay? And we're here to help you move forward and help you to move into the next step of confidence, hopefully. So what are we going to cover here tonight? We've got a bit of time here together. I'm really excited to have you with us. What we're going to cover is a few things. We're going to cover like why communications matters more than ever here in conservation right now, okay, up the front. And then we're going to talk about, some of the myths, I think, particularly regarding communications that can hold conservationists back and stop us from really engaging fully in it, and perhaps stop us from kind of building our confidence that little bit further, to help us to have more impact and help us to be more employable. Then we're going to share a real life example of communications really creating impact actually at a global scale, and something that you might actually recognize. And actually, until we did a little run through earlier today, I didn't realize, Lloyd, you were kind of involved in it too. So little teaser, hang around for that. That should be really fun. Then we're going to talk, really importantly, about the skills that employers are really looking for, the communication skills. We've done a review where you understand the skills that employers really value with regards to communications. And we're going to and Lloyd very kindly is going to share some tips around those core skills, okay, so that you should be able to walk away with some ideas about how to build and how to implement some of the things that employers are looking for, employability, and also to help your impact. And then finally, we're going to hang around for a Q&A at the end, okay? So yeah, if you want to kind of hang around for that, we're here to answer any questions you might have afterwards. Our goal here for you in this webinar and by the end is that by the end of the session, we want you to really understand why communications is critical for conservation impact and for your career. We want you to be able to recognize the core communication skills that employers are looking for, to understand what they are, and also to really set a clear practical path to developing those skills with confidence. We're going to set you on that path this evening, okay? And we'll also tell you how you can go even deeper as well with our support, or indeed on your own, okay? Okay, if you're up for this, drop your favorite emoji into the chat, okay? I thought that might be fun. I'd love to see what emojis you guys like. If I could find an owl emoji, I would be dropping that in, but I'm obviously a bit busy webinaring right now. Lloyd, I think I know what your favorite emoji would be. What would it be if you could drop one in?
I'd love to have an orca emoji, but there isn't one, so I'm going to go dolphin emoji. Yeah.
Dolphin. As a marine man, it has to be a dolphin, doesn't it? Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Okay, right. I'm going to move along. I can see some coming in now. Thank you. I'm going to share that also because I think that's quite fun. What do we got? I can see. I saw a whale. Ginger likes a whale. We've got an upside down smiley Ivan with his fire. Absolutely. Some really. I like the flamingo. There is an owl. Thank you, Clara. Yes, I'm gonna like that one. There you go. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. Thank you. Right. Right. Let me just move these away, and we're gonna have a little chat around this. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so before we kind of get into really the details of this evening, we do want to talk about why communication skills are so important. And let's explore why communications matter more than ever. I think, although we're having a bit of fun here this evening, which is really important, I do need to kind of set the scene, and I want to share some sobering stats really. And you can see them on screen here actually quite clearly. So, wildlife populations, they are in decline globally. And I think we all know that, yeah. Wildlife populations decline by an average. You can see here, WWF, Living Planet Index, 73% since 1970. Now, I was born in 1978. So during my lifetime, wildlife has really sharply declined and disappeared across the globe. And around 1 million species right now are at risk of extinction. Okay, if I can get my words out, which means biodiversity loss is happening 10 to 100 times faster than natural rates than we would expect, okay, without any of our human intervention. So it's a bit sobering. It's a bit of a wake up to us, I think, as a community. We are losing the battle right now to save nature globally. Conservationists, myself, Lloyd, and many of you here right now, and I think you can all call yourself conservationists if you want to try and help wildlife, if you're taking any action whatsoever. We know largely what to do. We know what the problems are. We know what the solutions are too, and we're winning lots of little battles all across the world in so many ways. We're doing our absolute best. We're a global community working together. We're passionate, we're driven, we're making an impact. But we're not doing enough yet. We're not raising enough support. We're not attracting enough people into this movement. We're not changing enough behaviors as quickly as we need to. And that is why communication skills really are so important. I am lucky enough to have spoken to some of the most senior conservation professionals the world over on the Conservation Careers podcast. And I often ask them at the end, if you listen to the podcast, what do we need to do as a global community to raise more to support and to have more impact? And the same message comes back time and time again for so many of them, which is we need better communication skills. We need to have better messaging. We need to be able to change more behavior to attract more support. I think no one said it better than Sir David Attenborough, and I haven't spoken to him. I'd love to speak to him on the podcast, but he said this in an interview in 2020, which is, saving the planet is now a communications challenge. And I couldn't agree more. It really, we know what we need to do. We just need to kind of get more support and more people behind this movement to really have the traction that we need. And that's why it becomes really a communications challenge. And it's why so many people are focusing in on communications within roles and across different roles within the sector. So Lloyd, we are sort of seeing a shift, really, a bit of a change within the sector of people looking for more communication skills. What is it that you're seeing, and what do you see that might be changing?
Yeah, first of all, I think you're absolutely right. So since I've been focused full-time on conservation, I have seen a big growth in demand for communications people, which is obviously positive for me, working as a consultant in conservation. But generally, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And obviously, I would never argue with Sir David Attenborough. He's got it hit the nail on the head as always, which is there is so much work, great work going on out there. But if people don't know about it, if those messages aren't shared, if we can't build the support off the back of that work, if we can't encourage people to take action, then ultimately we're not realizing the potential of that work. So the science is there, the research is there, conservation is doing a great job, but we can do so much more. And that's where the role as us people, not just me as a communication specialist, but all of us can help by building that message out there and encouraging people to get involved.
Absolutely. So what are employers looking for, Lloyd? Again, from your experience and working as a communicator and working with others in the kind of core things, the recurring patterns that you're seeing employers valuing?
Yeah, well, I guess there are many things, but broken it down here into 5 key points. I think the first point is planning. So planning communications activities. Failing to plan is planning to fail is failing to plan. I got it the wrong way around that time, Nick. But
I get it wrong every time. It's fine.
It's crucial. Ultimately, it's not about developing a plan and sticking to it rigidly. It's about trying to set your objectives, work out which audiences you want to reach, and developing a plan from there. So we're going to go on to that in a minute and break that down into more detail. So I'll come back to that. But it's also about writing and clearly communicating effectively. So right now we're communicating, obviously there's no writing involved, or in fact there has been because we've developed these slides, but there's always a role for writing in communications, whether that's writing press releases or helping journalists to write articles, developing social posts or writing blog posts or whatever that might be. Writing is essential. And I don't mean writing novels, I mean getting your point across quickly and being to the point. And to do that, you really need to also engage audiences. And again, that's what employers are often looking for, the ability to engage audiences. We as communicators have to be great storytellers. And to do that, we have to understand our audience, we have to understand our key points, and we have to get that across succinctly. So engaging, which again, we'll come on to in a minute, how we do that through social media, is a key part of what we're trying to achieve as communicators. And another big part of that is, and often where people pigeonhole communications, is within press. So gaining press and media attention, whether that be traditional broadcast media on radio or TV, or national newspapers or in magazines or online, whatever it is, engaging with the press is a huge part of what we do as communicators. And there's a very specific set of skills there that I can certainly help with. I've got more than 25 years experience, but there's some key rules that we're going to go into in a minute, actually, which can help people understand that fear point, which is dealing with journalists, which it doesn't have to be worrying. They're not there to bite people's heads off. They're very much there to develop stories. And how can we help them to develop those stories? That's what we need to get across. And finally, it's about those support elements. And what I mean by support is, how do we measure those campaigns? How do we help the organizations or the governments or the not-for-profits that we work for understand the value of what we're doing? And this, with social media and online content, it's really easy to measure our engagement and our communication. So it's, how do we bring those aspects in as well? So there's a lot there I've kind of thrown at you in 5 key sectors, but we're going to break that down in a bit more.
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd. Yeah, and we're going to go into more detail on many of that, but it gives a good overview actually as to what employers are really valuing in the sector right now. Yeah. And, digging a little bit deeper than that again, what we've done at Conservation Careers is we analysed nearly 30,000 conservation jobs from over 100 countries just to kind of understand, what employers are really valuing when they're hiring for people. And communication stood out as such a core skill set, actually. And it was so obvious once we saw it as well. What we found is that, 41% of all conservation jobs, of any conservation jobs, if you lined, 100 conservationists up, at least 41 of them, okay, are going to be involved in communications and using communication skills on an almost daily basis, on a very regular basis. It's kind of core part of their role and what employers are really seeking. So it's a kind of core recurring pattern. So if you're working in fundraising or project management or science and research or, ecotourism or whatever it might be, chances are you're going to be using communication skills really regularly. And these are skills that you can develop and learn and really refine actually quite quickly with a bit of support and a bit of experience. And of these, when we look again at the nearly 30,000 jobs, 2,726, which is about 9%, okay, were communications specialist roles. So again, if you lined 100 conservationists up, 9 or 10 of them are communications specialists like Lloyd. Okay, so these are communications officers, these are marketing managers, these are social media officers, and we're seeing more and more of these roles coming along all the time. And again, it's because the conservation community and the leaders understand the value of this, the value of good messaging and the urgent need to raise more support, more action, okay, and save more wildlife through that elevation of the importance of conservation that communications allows us to access. So if you want to succeed really as a professional conservationist, communication skills are really increasingly valuable. And I think really that is the implication here. That's the sort of the simple message that certainly I take away when we look at some of the stats like this, that, if you do want to succeed as a conservationist, certainly in 2026 and beyond into the future, comm skills really matter. They matter for impact that you can see here in front of you. They allow you to have more impact, to raise more support. They matter for your employability too, personally. Okay, so we know employers are looking for these skills, and if you can develop them yourselves and showcase that to employers, then you are more employable as a result. And then also, as a result of that, it matters for career progression too. They help you to move you through your career with more confidence and with more kind of strings to your bow, if you like. At the same time, we do see this kind of familiar frustration when we speak to professional conservationists, and you might feel and experience this too, actually. And if you do, feel free to give me a thumbs up, that you are, as a professional, expected to, do comms, just do comms as part of your job, but perhaps you were never trained to do it. I know that certainly that was my experience back in the day, so you learn by trial and error, you learn by doing, you just sort of hope you're getting it right. Yeah. I know that's how I learned, and I was really lucky, during my time, particularly as communications manager at BirdLife, to have some, incredible professionals around me who helped and guided and supported me and helped me to kind of grow and learn with confidence. But it doesn't have to sort of be that way. You can learn different ways. I think the good news in conservation, and particularly around communications, that, communications is not, it's not particularly a talent. If there are elements of it which creativity plays an important part, and that's a really nice bit of communications. Actually, you can be creative and really kind of come up with new ideas and get your juices flowing that way. Mostly communications, it's a learnable, structured skill set. It's a process and often like a framework that you can learn. And once you've learned it, you can apply it with confidence and really grow and have more impact. Once you've learned these skills, and particularly from someone who can teach you, confidence can come really quickly. So I think that's really good news, actually. Yeah, you can actually learn this quite quickly. It doesn't have to be a hard struggle of trial and error and hope. It can be quite a quick process of learning and implementation and moving forwards. Now, over the last, 6, 7, it's that thing, isn't it? Meme. Terrible. Yeah, stopping now. We've taught, 500 plus people around the world to really deliver great communication skills, and we hear and see some popular myths often actually coming up through conversations with them. So what we wanted to do at the beginning is just kind of bust some of these myths and kind of get them out of the way, and these might be things that you actually recognize yourself. So 3 quick myths. Let's do some myth busting, Lloyd. Number 1, you can see here on screen, press coverage can only be achieved if you know journalists. That's got to be right. If you know journalists, you'll get your press coverage. Lloyd, is that correct?
No, I think it certainly was when I started back in the late 90s. Yes, I am that old. But I think, I know definitely that it's changed. So I know plenty of journalists, obviously being in this sector for a long time. I'm lucky enough to call quite a few of my friends. But does that mean they're going to write a story for me? No, it doesn't. They're not going to do that for me, even if they like me. So Does it mean they might open my email or they might answer my message? Then yes, probably. That gets me through the door. But still, we have to have a good story. And the way to build press coverage is to understand what the journalist wants. And that's based on their background in terms of their kind of beat, if you like, as we would call it. So their areas of interest, but also the title they're writing for. So are they writing for National Geographic, or are they writing for a national newspaper or a blog? Those are three different, very different types of approach. So pitching your story based on what that journalist wants and the title they're writing for, that's much more likely to get you coverage than it is if you know that journalist.
Yeah. And the chances that you know all the journalists in all the different mediums that you need to connect to in that particular moment with that news story is quite slim. Yeah.
It's impossible. Yeah. And if anything, if you include online titles, there are many more journalists or writers now than there ever have been. So it's impossible. It's just not relevant anymore.
Okay. Busted. Right. Number 2 then. This one feels like a no-brainer. And communications really is about, it's about social media, it's about press releases. That's, in a nutshell, that's comms, isn't it?
Yeah, it's easy. Absolutely. You just write a press release and you get loads of coverage and media. Unfortunately, that never happens. So press releases are important. They're a great tool. Social posts are a really useful tool as well, but they're part of the mix. Press releases are a great guide for when a journalist is interested in a story, but you've got to get them interested in the first place. So is communications purely about social media and writing press releases? I wish that would make my life so much easier, but it's not, definitely not. There are many more parts that we're going to go into actually here. And being a specialist in public relations, or being a specialist in social media, or being a specialist in influencer engagement just shows the different kind of ranges of skills that you can include in the communications mix. That doesn't mean you have to be one of those. You can be a generalist in the same way I am, but there's lots of different aspects that come into communicating a campaign.
Yeah. So much broader. Yeah. And the final myth we wanted to touch on really is this myth around kind of any publicity being good publicity. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad or whatever, so long as your name's out there, okay, you're doing something really good, and that's always going to be positive.
Yeah, again, I personally think that's a myth. There's probably others that would argue against that. But I think that the change that's happened now in terms of reputation, maybe that was truer 30 years ago, is in terms of social media and people having the ability to offer feedback. So if I sell mobile phones and they're not very good, 30 years ago, I could have just put a press release saying it's the best mobile phone in the world, and there would be no right of reply, really. Now, as soon as I say that, my mobile phone is the best in the world, but people say, oh, it's not because it breaks and it has no battery life, and it's got no connection, then those responses will automatically be online. So reputation is vital, because the way we search for products or information or on conservation organizations is through Google or search engines. And immediately, one of the highest ranked responses are through reviews or through AI, which is based on reviews and user-generated content. So that reputation automatically takes a hit. So yeah, I think, bad reputation is not a positive thing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so what do we learn? We know that communication skills are increasingly sought after in the sector. We know that there are some popular misconceptions that you just heard, which I think, although they sort of feel true, actually in today's modern communications landscape, it can often be quite different to what you expect. I think it's time we sort of talk through like a communications real life example. Let's sort of bring this to life and show what communications good comms looks like in a kind of conservation context. There's too many C's in that sentence. So let's see what it looks like. So I'm going to hand over to you, Lloyd, again, and you're going to kind of share a bit of an example and something that you were personally involved with as well, which I find really interesting. Something I think many of us here online may have heard about previously as well. So let's hand over to you, and we'll go over to this slide.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at a video in a minute, but just to introduce it. So this is one of WWF's biggest campaigns. It's called Earth Hour, which you may well be aware of. If not, you will be in a minute. And in fact, Earth Hour was launched in 2007 with a very simple prospect. And that is basically switching lights off and taking pictures of landmarks in the dark. Sounds really dull, but as we're about to find out, works really well. And in fact, I was lucky enough to work on that campaign the year after it was launched in 2008. So we'll go into a bit more on that once we've seen this video.
Okay, let's see what it's all about. It's just a quick 60-second video.
It's a really simple idea. And when you explain it to people, they go, "Oh, why is that interesting?" It's because it's different and it's content driven. So the campaign was developed to be shared online. That was its purpose originally. It was one of the first back in 2007. And it's really exploded from then. So basically, the idea of asking people to switch their lights off for an hour, it doesn't really help in terms of driving those conservation mechanisms forward. However, what that hour has come to represent really does change the landscape in terms of what WWF is trying to do. So just some of the stats you heard there: over 118 countries now taking part in the last year. People dedicated nearly 3 million hours to environmental action as a result. So that's a new record. Seeing landmarks like the Sydney Opera House or the Burj Khalifa or Big Ben or wherever in the dark sounds really dull. It actually works brilliantly as a piece of content, which is nice and shareable. And it spans over 190 countries and territories now worldwide. So that participation is massive. And it's not about just sharing pictures. That's now, if you can switch over the slides, Nick, become a crucial part of what governments do and how they engage with the public. So as a result of that, I think in the second or third year, I'd have to check, governments started to release their environmental action to be timed with Earth Hour. So Earth Hour actually became a spark for environmental action on a government level, which I think is huge. So they saw this public engagement. They saw, well, this is how we can talk to our voters and tell them what we're doing from an environmental point of view. And they've started launching, well, they started many years ago, launching their announcements, and that's continued. So this very simple idea of photos in the dark, which sounds ridiculous, has grown into this huge movement that's driving action, getting people engaged. It's a really simple thing everyone can do. Share photos when you turn your lights out. Sounds silly, works perfectly. That's how great content works.
Yeah, there's so much to that, isn't there? Yeah, well, I found it quite interesting. It was just turn your lights off, and it still is that, as you can see here on screen with the big image here in front of you. But it's more than that. They're encouraging people to do something good for the planet within an hour. It's sort of like it's broadened it out, it's made it more accessible, and it continues to evolve. And we were talking earlier, Lauren, and one thing that really struck me with Earth Hour particularly is like the global nature, and obviously WWF's a huge network of organizations locally and regionally and globally working together as a partnership. And this gives everyone something that they can do locally. And just the unity of the network that's been brought together through a global campaign like this, that's been centrally coordinated but then rolled out locally, is really good for the network itself, just as an organization, is almost like an internal communications tool. Yeah, it's probably not spoken about so much, but it's so important, and it's a great vehicle for that, for uniting the network.
No, it sounds ridiculous that, an organization needs to be united. But in terms of WWF, it is an absolute monster organization. And that's a positive thing, don't get me wrong. But having one campaign that unites all those individual offices and all those focuses is quite rare. In fact, you often get, individual country-based or geographical-based campaigns, but very rare to get full global campaigns. And this is one that's been hugely successful because anyone can do it pretty much. And as a result of that, we've seen real action on a governmental level, and it's been hugely successful.
It has, hasn't it? And some of the messages that come out, and we're sort of starting to hear it across some of the examples we're talking through as well, is, what makes communications work are things like this. It's having a really clear purpose, as we just saw there, a clear audience, understanding who that audience is, and a real clear action. And actions, as we'll talk about a bit more, they can be really simple. Such a simple action, turn the lights off for 60 minutes, something almost anyone can do, really nice and simple, but it signifies something much more important than that, particularly when everyone does it together. Everything sort of builds in terms of communications, and particularly around campaigns, across very simple things like this. What's your objective? What's your audience, or who are your audience, and what's the action you want them to take as well? And again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, in fact, very soon. Okay, so let's change gears ever so slightly. We've had a good example. We understand why comm skills are important in the sector and why the time is now to be really kind of doubling down on this. Let's talk about, particularly in a bit more detail, what are the comm skills that employers are looking for? Okay. And we're going to talk about these in terms of like these are really learnable, practical, and in-demand skills across the roles. We're going to cover 6 skills that employers are looking for that we found through that review that we did. And Lloyd is very kind. He's here to kind of share some tips about how we can develop them in ourselves personally. Okay, so we can walk off with a bit of confidence to kind of touch on each of these 6 areas. Okay, to have more impact and to be more employable. So, without further ado, let's get cracking in on these 6 skills. The first one that we see, again, across the board when it comes to communications, and something that actually many of us can feel a little bit apprehensive about because we don't fully understand what it is. It's communications planning, okay? The need to create a comms plan before you do something. And this really links back to that lesson of Urfa about having a clear purpose, a clear audience, clear actions. And without a comms plan, you really don't know what you're doing or how you're going to do it, what success might look like, how you're going to measure your progress. All these things are kind of woven into a good comms plan. And a good comms plan really helps you to clarify, as you can see here, why you're communicating. Like, what's the purpose of this? How are you going to link messages to kind of real clear conservation goals? And it really makes things, intentional, doesn't it, Lloyd, rather than sort of being reactive.
Yeah, completely. And I think the key thing with planning is to keep it simple. And that's certainly the way I would look at it, because I've seen examples of comms plans and they're very big Excel spreadsheets with tabs and layers. And I'm like, how does anyone know what's going on? But I think I've tried to break it down here into 5 key points that I think a plan should include. It doesn't have to be huge. The first one is a goal. And that sounds, again, really obvious, but you'd be surprised how many plans I see without an actual goal. What are we trying to achieve? So what are we trying to see? That could be something as simple as we're trying to drive 10% more engagement on our website. Sounds really boring, but it could be very important. So whatever that goal is, make it clear. And we can also use that goal to measure, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Secondly, all comms is based around audiences. So how do I tell a story? I tell a story in a very different way to my 7-year-old son than I do to Nick. And I tell a very different story to my friends than I do to my mother. So the way I tell stories, or the way I engage with people, is based on the audience, their understanding, their way of communicating. So we all do that naturally, and that's all we're doing with a plan. We're identifying the audience and we're telling the story in that way. And that's exactly what messaging is about. So that's our third point, messaging. That message communicates that goal to that audience. It's as simple as that. What do we want to achieve? Who are we trying to get to do it? This is the message we want to tell them based on understanding what they know, what they need to know, and how they communicate. So then that ultimately leads us to the fourth point, which is the action. So what do we actually want them to do? Well, that could be make a donation, it could be sign a petition, it could be avoid something even. Maybe we want to stop them doing something. So those actions need to be clear, and that will have been delivered through our message to our audience in a way that they understand. And the way we reach that audience with that action through that message is through different channels. So we know, pretty much all of us would know, that there's a very different audience on Facebook, for example, than there is on TikTok. So there's probably older people. Well, there is definitely older people on Facebook than there is on TikTok. And we know that they consume media in very different ways. Facebook people probably watch more TV. So maybe we would link traditional broadcast mechanisms to Facebook, and TikTok probably users never watch traditional TV. So again, that would be useless to make that link. So we'd use different influencers to get across different actions and tell different messages to different audiences. So those kind of 5 points, if you start with those on a communications plan, I would base it on 6 months to start with, build it out to a year if you can. I would keep it flexible as well. The other mistake that people make is pushing on with a plan, even though it's clearly not working. Well, I've written the plan now, I've got to stick to it. No, you haven't. You can change it at any point. So keep them brief, keep them flexible, and make sure you know which goals and audiences you're delivering your messages to.
Brilliant. Yeah. So 5 simple questions, really. Keep it simple and stay agile with it too. Yeah. Really, really good. Thank you. Yeah. So let's go on to number 2 then, the second skill that we see employers looking for regularly. And this is one of writing engaging copy. Yeah. So, however you communicate with your audience, your message will likely begin and likely end actually with the kind of the written word. And therefore your writing skills become really essential. It's not just about a talent with words. It's about understanding how to communicate the who, what, the where, the why, and the how, which we'll talk about in a second as well, in a range of mediums, whether that's a 280 character tweet or X, whatever they call it nowadays, to a 28,000 word report. It's really about, do you have good, engaging writing, copywriting skills? Okay. So Lloyd, have you got any tips to kind of help us around how to write engaging copy?
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much any way that a news report or a feature or a TV broadcast is developed, is written, is broadcast to you is in this way here. It's either inverted triangle, or, sorry, an upside down pyramid, whatever you want to call it. It's three aspects of a triangle the wrong way around. And whenever you read a story, if you keep this in mind, you'll see that it's been developed in that way. So it starts with the lead. And that lead breaks down the who, the what, the when, the why, and the how. So that's the key points to get you interested. And then once you're grabbed, we can add the body. And that's kind of the additional detail, if you like. So we've grabbed your attention. Here's the deep meat of the story, if you like. And then at the end, you have a tail, which is kind of the action. So if you're interested in this lead, I've grabbed your attention. Here's the meaty content. This is what you can do to get involved. So it's basically three aspects. Watch a news broadcast, read a magazine. I bet you article that is, I bet you that article or that news broadcast will be developed in that way.
Well, let's talk through an example of that then, this inverted pyramid, with the head, the body, and the tail. Tell us about this example, Lloyd.
Yeah, so this is a story that's very relevant to my world right now. So it's called the BBNJ, which is the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, which is a terrible name, but that's what
we don't need any more acronyms in conservation, thank you.
Oh, we love an acronym. But worldwide, the BBNJ is being pushed through a number of countries. I believe there's just over 60 now countries that have pushed this through. Basically, what it means is the ocean is pretty much lawless outside of the 12-mile national zone, which every country has around its waters. The first 12 miles from land are governed by that country. Outside of those 12 miles are what's called the outside national jurisdiction waters, so open ocean, where there's pretty much no law. And that's been a big issue for the ocean, being 71% of our planet. Has suffered a lot of damage because there's been no real legislation. This changes that. It's being pushed through, and we're seeing that in the UK, which is where Nick and I are based, coming through now, slowly being pushed on. So this press release came out about a week or so ago, and it was based on exactly our inverted pyramid style. So we've got the what, being the royal assent, which is part of UK law, being awarded to BBNJ, the who, which is the UK, the when, which is they want to get it in before COP in 2027, which is when the BBNJ will be focused on, be spoken about, the where, which is 2/3 of the ocean, as we know, covers our planet, and the why, which I've just been through, and the how, which is building that legal foundation to put a BBNJ into all countries' laws, if you like, so it's actually enforceable. And that's all part of 30 by 30, so protecting 30% of the ocean or 30% of our planet by 2030. And then from that, you'd have the body of the text, which again, I won't go into the detail now, but this is kind of the meat, if you like, which is probably a term, but the detail that we've got in there, so including MPAs, including fair shares of benefits, and that capacity building for developing states. So it's trying to be a more fairer share of how we govern the ocean, or if we govern it at all. And then finally, we get to the tail aspect, which is how people can take action, how they can help, that this isn't law yet, that there needs to be more stages, so we need to keep the pressure up. So 3 key elements for BBNJ. This case, it's in the UK, but it's going through most countries now. Some have ratified already, 60 odd, as I said, have already ratified, many more to come. And I think this will make a huge difference for the ocean. So in my world, it's a great piece of legislation.
Yeah, I love it. And really simple too, grab attention, provide detail, leave people with a call to action, and the structure within that you can apply to almost any story.
Yeah, and it's a really complex piece of legislation, but you can break it down using this tool. I think that's the key point.
Yeah. Okay, skill 3 then is all about generating press coverage. And the process of developing press coverage is perhaps one of the most rewarding and prized and also misunderstood elements of any communications campaign, right? So, few of us have experience of doing it well. Lloyd, you have some great and some very recent experience of doing it well as well. So tell us a little bit about, generating press coverage, and also actually paint a bit of a picture of some recent coverage that you're involved with just, last week or the week before, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess public relations, which is generally what press comes under, is what been one of my specialisms for many years. I started off in PR agencies, and that was kind of my bread and butter, for want of a very British colloquialism. And more recently, I mentioned to you that I was put out of my comfort zone at the start of our engagement, and this was it basically. So I spent 2 weeks on a research ship researching AMOC, which is the Atlantic Meridional Oscillating Current, which controls the weather in Europe. And as part of that research, I was asked to raise awareness of this very important oscillating current that controls our weather. And I did that by liaising with Channel 4 News, who in the UK are one of the major broadcasters. And I actually took both the chief correspondent, who you can see there, who's Alex Thompson, who's a lovely guy, and his camera person and his director onto this research ship for 2 weeks off the coast of West Africa, which was a little bit out of my comfort zone, because although I'm very comfortable talking to journalists, living with them day in, day out, in fact, having the cabin next door, that's a whole different world. And trying to get them to cover the story in the right way, doing 4 live broadcasts in the ship in the middle of the Atlantic and facing all those challenges was definitely out of my comfort zone. However, all went well. We did 4 great pieces of broadcast. It's gone down really well for the organizations, really well for the science. There were also a couple of other journalists on board. And it just shows what can be achieved. But to go into that, that took probably 6 months of development, encouraging Channel 4 not only to send their chief correspondent into the middle of the Atlantic for 12 days where he couldn't do much else other than this story, and kind of encouraging Channel 4 to understand the importance of this research and how much their community would be engaged by it. That took some time, but we got there and it worked really well, and they were very happy, and they in fact want to go on another of our expeditions. So hopefully we'll be working on that as well. So it just shows that PR approach, that building media coverage can stretch from, you know, engaging with an influencer right up to 2 weeks on a ship in the middle of nowhere, trying to develop broadcast content, which it could have gone wrong, but it went very well.
Good. Yeah, and I enjoyed watching it too, actually. It was very good on the news. Yeah.
Thank you.
Skill 4 out of 6 then, just kind of keep us rolling along then. So yeah, it's all about using social media. That's what employers are looking for as well. So again, we talked at the beginning, it's not just about social media, and the fact that it's skill 4, I think gives us a little bit of a signal that other things are more valued, but it's certainly in the kind of top 6 skill sets that employers are hiring against right now. You know, and social media, it allows us to reach, you know, millions of people quite quickly, quite easily, and also quite cheaply, often free as well, doesn't it, Lloyd? So tell us a little bit about, you know, why is social media important to conservationists, and yeah, what can we do in terms of like what hints or tips or skills can we use to help us to have more impact using this?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, you've already presented the issue very well in terms of social media and the potential there. And I could spend the next few hours going into the minutiae of each social platform, but we're not going to do that. We're going to break it down to 3 key points that I feel are essential to any social platform and engaging via social media. And we call it the rule of thirds. And very simply, they're 3 key points. One of those points, everyone is great at. So the first point, which is 1/3 of your engagement or your posting or how you talk to people through social media, should be about your organization and your campaigns. So easy. Everyone does that very, very well. Sadly, the next 2/3, which make the difference, these aren't done so well at all. So what I would suggest to engage people is to offer information outside of your organization. That sounds counterintuitive, but remembering what we're trying to do online through social is to engage an audience, understand what they want, what they do understand, what they don't understand, and offer them a range of content that will engage them. Sometimes that content isn't yours. It might be someone else's. It might be a competitor's. It might be another organization. And there's nothing wrong with sharing what we would call curated content, so other people's content. And that's a key part of engaging people through social media. But perhaps the most important third that pretty much no one does very well is that listening and encouraging engagement. And what I mean by listening is actually, as we said, as part of the planning, understanding what your audience wants. And you can do that by asking them questions about key issues. So for example, when I'm researching dolphins, I ask them, how many species are found in the Eastern English Channel of the UK, which hardly anyone knows. And then we know that we can build more engagement around the species that we're seeing here. So building that out, asking questions, driving engagement, which also helps with the algorithm for all of the social networks, because they're driven via engagement, or follows or likes or clicks or comments. So actually asking questions sounds really obvious, but often forgotten, will help you to drive that engagement as well. So three elements that I think all social profiles need to drive that engagement.
Yeah, and it's interesting just to reflect also. I mean, we're talking here about using it, as part of your organization in your job, but you can also use rule of thirds, in your own personal profile in your job hunt too. So like on LinkedIn, if you're looking for a communications role, for instance, you can be talking about communications and broadcasting your messages about the importance of it, as someone who aspires to be a communicator and to become known for that. You can also be sharing other people's content that relates to it. And then you can be engaging in groups as well of other professionals who share those interests. And it sort of works quite well, from a kind of career perspective too, this kind of rule of thirds when thinking about social media and developing and thinking about yourself, as the goal.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, skill 5. So this is all about creating content for communications campaign. This is another really valuable skill that employers are looking for, Lloyd.
Yeah, and I think this is, to be honest, this is where most communications campaigns put all their resource. We call that money, call that time, whatever they want. So I want to make an amazing video, and I'm going to, as I did a couple of weeks ago, go out to the middle of the Atlantic, and I'm going to film stuff with drones, and it's going to be wonderful, and that's going to cost me thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever. But as we've seen with WWF Earth Hour, amazing content can be just literally turning off a light and taking a picture. The content doesn't have to be driven by an amazing editor or spent hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds on it. You can drive content by understanding what that audience wants. And that goes back to our rule of thirds. Have you actually asked your audience what they're interested in? And have you developed content to answer that need? I think if you do that, it will be much more useful than just throwing hundreds of thousands of pounds at a piece of content. So I would suggest keep content based on what your audience wants, not on what you think is pretty or is engaging or is the latest video trend.
And content can be so varied too, can it? It could be a podcast, it could be a video, it could be an image, a photo, it could be an infographic, it could be a white paper, a blog, who knows? Yeah, it really can get quite creative with this, so long as you understand the audience and what the messages you're trying to deliver to them. You can sort of have a bit of fun around that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the last one, and last but by no means least, actually, really is about measuring communication success. Something many of us might actually overlook, and it's something which is really laid out quite clearly in a communications plan from the beginning when you think about the goals and whether you're achieving them or not. But something that not many of us have a lot of confidence or competence in actually is like how do you measure communications, Lloyd?
Yeah.
Like what would you say around that?
And this has got so much easier. So again, when I started, it was genuinely hard to measure communications. But now we are literally surrounded by analytics. So every social post creates a ream of analytics. Every web article creates a ream of analytics. Every click on your website creates a story of how people are moving through your website. So there are lots of opportunities, probably too many to be honest, to measure. So whatever objective you set in your plan, as Nick said, you should set a measurement for that objective. So as I said, that really simple 10% growth in audience on your website, that's easily measured. Or we've just got 3 really easy metrics here that show things like social share of voice, which is mentions divided by mentions of your organizations by, competitive organizations versus your mentions, engagement rate, which is engagements on your profile divided by your followers, and conversion rate, which is conversions divided by clicks. So people who land on your website and people who click on a piece of content, for example. So those are 3. There are many, many more, hundreds literally, of different ways of measuring depending on your objective. Everything is measurable now in terms of comms, so there is no excuse. It's one of those really scary things that doesn't need to be scary. And I think as long as when you're planning, you set an objective and a measurement, everyone's on board with that. The organizations that you're working with will be clear how these are being measured, and that should help you to get your message across.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So that's the top six skills, and there's more to that employers value, but these are the really big bulky ones that we see as recurring patterns, across so many different job descriptions and so many different roles within the sector too. I think I just want to pause for a second because you delivered so much value there. Let's just take a little breather. Okay. Hopefully you're getting some value from this at home. Just take a second just to reflect if you are. What's the most useful thing you've learned so far, across this webinar so far? Is there anything that's kind of stood out as that's important, or I want to think a bit more about this, or I'm glad I learned that, or I didn't understand that, or what's really sort of standing out as the most useful thing you've learned so far? Okay, and I'm gonna I'll share the comments here on screen too, so you can kind of see others here as well. So what are we saying? What do you think about? So we've got some questions in here. We are going to go to Q&A at the end, which is absolutely fine. So where do you find the conversion? Someone's asking a question. We'll come back to that. Okay. How to break down the skills needed. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's quite interesting to kind of see those things broken down, the kind of 6 core skills, and understanding it at that level. Because once you get that, then you can start to actually plan for developing and bridging any gaps and becoming really employable for this. So absolutely, that's important. Yeah. Communications planning. Yeah. So important. Something that actually I think many of us do find a little bit, a little bit worrisome, put it that way. Yeah, but it's something which actually, where again, as always with all these things, like once broken down, it becomes quite simple and quite straightforward. This rule of thirds, yeah, there's a few of you mentioning that. I do like that too. Yeah, that simple idea of broadcasting for a third, sharing for a third, engaging for a third. You can use that in so many different ways in social, and it works really well. Yeah, top 6 Tom's comms skills, pyramid structure. Yeah, the copywriting formula. Yeah, that sort of inverted pyramid, Lucy Smith. Yeah, it's used so many different ways in so many different places. Yeah, comms planning too. Yeah, absolutely. There's all sorts in this, but hopefully you can kind of see the structure that kind of starts to come through, and what employers really are valuing here. Another quick question then before we kind of move on. Can I have your permission, or can we even have your permission, to explain how we can help you? Now, with a lot of this, you can do this on your own, and we're here to give you as much as possible tools and frameworks you can go off and implement. But it would be okay if we went a bit further and actually showed you about how we can help you with some of this too as well. If you can give me a thumbs up in the comments, that would be great. I can see comms planning being important still. Yeah. The structure for writing a communications piece that is very different from that of a scientific paper. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you, Deanna Johnson. Yes, that's Deanna. I think it's Deanna. Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. Okay, well let's just move on and talk a little bit more about what we could do if you want to kind of go further with this. Okay, so how I learnt communications, very briefly. This is like a little picture story actually of my career. Actually, make it a little bit bigger, shall I? Okay, so you can sort of see. I started off, studying barn owls, as a PhD. I then went to BirdLife, communications manager. I worked in the Pacific for a while doing fundraising. Lloyd and I went to the Durrell Conservation Academy and had a nice couple of days out there teaching. Lloyd, you were teaching communications to the conservation professionals from around the globe. And then I've also been teaching at Cambridge Uni the last 6 or 7 years too. During my career, communications has been something that's been so important to me, but I've really learnt it on the job. I've learnt it the hard way, really. What I've learnt across 2 years as a kind of communications professional at BirdLife International, as a comms manager, I realized now I could probably learn it in a single day with some really good guidance and some structured support, some frameworks, and some guidance along the way from someone like Lloyd or someone else. Okay. It's interesting how, trial and error is the kind of hard way to do it, but there's a really quick and much easier way to do it. And I think really that's the sort of difference between sort of guessing and really learning properly, if you like, and just learning from very first principles and learning much more quickly. And that's what we need. We talk about, the comms sector and the conservation movement as a whole, needing more impact more quickly. We haven't got time for trial and error. We need to move forwards quite quickly. And this is the kind of quick way to do it. I mean, nowadays, I think there are 2 ways to learn. One is kind of you can go on your own and you can learn. We're here to deliver monthly webinars, delivering as much value. I want you to walk away with some structure, okay, and be able to do some of this, to use that inverted pyramid to understand what it is. You can Google it, you can download formulas, you can use that. That's great, And same with the rule of thirds and so many other things, the metrics and other things that we shared. The other way of doing it is to come with us. We're here to guide and support you, and we can teach this stuff to you. We have 2 amazing courses. They're both certificated courses in communications that Lloyd has developed for us over the last 5 or so years. Okay, and I'll just talk you through what they look like. Let me just briefly show you what these 2 courses are, because they are open for enrollment right now. If you're interested, they're open until the end of this week, till Friday, and then we'll be welcoming the next cohort as of Saturday onwards into these courses. So the first one is our certificate in conservation communications. This is our foundation certificate. Okay, this is one that we have over 500 students through so far and counting. It's designed for conservationists who want to build strong practical skill sets from the ground up. So you don't need any communications background at all in order to engage and really benefit from this course. Inside the course, you'll learn how to plan communications correctly, properly, create a communications plan. You'll be able to write clearly and effectively. Let me try and make this a little bit bigger so it looks a bit small. There we go. You'll understand how to secure media attention as well, and engagement. So important. We talked about that already this evening, and how you can engage audiences and then measure your impact, okay, to know that whether your comms plan is working or whether you need to adapt and be agile and change things. It's not really theory heavy, okay? It's really practically structured, okay? So it's got lots of examples in there leading you through. This is how it is done actually on the ground in reality, and this is how you can do it, and these are the skills to practice, and here's an example which you can then practice with, okay, and learn from. And if you need support, we're here to help you through that. The actual certificate itself, who's it for, really, this foundation level certificate? Well, it's for people who are working on conservation projects now, who need to do communications as part of your day job, just do comms, like we said before. You could learn it this way quickly in a day. It's for early career or people who want to transition into conservation. So if you're a career switcher, this is one of the kind of most valuable skill sets that you can develop that helps you to kind of blend into lots of different roles within the sector. It's really good for researchers who have to do outreach. That's a really kind of an important area that's not really talked about a lot, but something that's really important for scientists particularly. Or it's for professionals who want to feel more confident in some of the things that they're doing. You don't need a comms background. You just need a willingness to learn, a structured process. So that's the certificate in Conservation Communications Foundation, okay, which is open now till Friday. And then we also have this advanced certificate as well that's been developed as a kind of follow-on. But if you have experience already, this might be something you might be interested in. It's a certificate in Conservation Communications Strategy, okay. And this is for people who are ready to kind of develop a full communication strategy from first principles up. Can you analyze situations? Yeah. Can you craft targeted messages, having identified the key audiences? And then can you build a campaign plan? This is what it's all about. It takes you from doing comms to leading communications. Okay, it's a real kind of strategic shift up. So after completing this course, you'll be able to confidently develop a communication strategy from initial brief right through to campaign plan. Oh, right. So how do the courses work? Well, they both work the same way. In fact, all our courses at Conservation Careers work the same way. They're 100% online, and they're also 100% self-paced. Okay, so you can go entirely at your own pace. Okay, so you can burn through it in a day if you really want to binge it, okay, and get it done, or you can do it bite-sized, bit by bit, which is what we'd recommend, like a module at a time, okay? Learn that skill, move on with confidence, ask help if you need it, okay? So they're totally self-paced. They are around about sort of 8-ish, maybe 12 hours of learning. It depends how quickly you go and how much time you spend on things like the examples and the worked examples that we leave for you and encourage you to do. They're all guided by that fellow above me there, Lloyd Goffman, who you know very well now, and they're built around real-world examples. So you learn a skill and you see it happen in the real world, and then you practice that skill. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, and at the end, you receive a certificate of completion. Okay, which is something you can put on your CV, your resume, your LinkedIn profile too. It's really good structured learning for people with busy lives. You can kind of work it around. You can do it in your lunch hour, even bit by bit. Very flexible. And there's 2 ways to enroll, which is new for us this year. Okay, you can enroll either, I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see. You can enroll either as an individual course, okay? Either you can choose either the foundation, or the advanced certificate, okay? And just choose one course and do that real focused skill development. And you then get a year's access. You get a full year's access. You can extend beyond that if you really want, but a year is more than enough to work through one of these courses. Okay, with support across that year as you need it. For that, it's a one-off price. It's £250, $330, or €300, as you can see here on screen. The other option, which is new for this year, and it will apply to all our courses, all our certificated courses, is you can enroll in what we call our CC Pass, our Conservation Careers Pass, which is our access to all courses, all our foundation and advanced certificated courses and more. This is really about accelerated ongoing career development, okay, real immersive career development. So that would give you access to both our communications courses plus everything else, which I'll talk a bit more about in the next slide. In this, you can cancel at any time, okay, so you can join and just do 3 months, okay, and then leave if you wish, okay, and the price for that is just £147, $195, or €174 per quarter, okay, so that's how that works, the CC Pass. In the CC Pass, You gain access to all our career courses, okay, that we can access at any time. So that's our career Kickstarter. So if you're kind of leading the sector or starting, you're an aspiring conservationist, it's our flagship program that leads you from confusion to clarity as to where you might fit and what you need to do to become really employable for the role that you've chosen through the course. All our career courses, all our certificated courses, so those 2 comms courses. We have a conservation standards, project management and design, fundraising, certificate in conservation fundraising. We've got marine conservation and rewilding and community-based conservation and conservation education coming very soon too, and more. So you're getting access to our full catalogue as well, plus all our events and resources in our amazing CC Pro community you'll be part of, plus all our live listings on the website, all the jobs and the funding and the experiences and the training. It's all included in the CC Pass. Everything we've got to support you in your career to develop as an aspiring or as a professional conservationist is included in the CC Pass. You also have our lovely team of experts in residence, of which Lloyd is part of, as you now know. We've got Christy Foster, who's our head of coaching, between me and Lloyd there in the picture, stripy top. We've got Kate there with the lovely hat on there. It's Kate Evans, who's our expert in residence for fundraising. Next to her with the headphones on is Felix Chabula, who's our conservation standards expert in residence. Next to him on the right is lovely Helen Gibbons, our expert in residence for community-based conservation. Bottom left, we've got Pedro Rivera, who's our expert in residence for rewilding. And then next to him with the glasses, we've got David Johnson, Dr. David Johnson, who's our conservation education expert in residence. Then we've got Tara Phillips, who's our public speaking expert in residence. And last but not least, bottom right there, Dr. David Schiffman, who's our marine conservation expert in residence. So if you're interested in any of those courses and want to kind of go through some guided learning with an expert support, the CC Pass is there for you. What do people think of our comms training? Well, what are our comms stars saying? Well, we're really proud. I mean, 500 students through now, 5 or 6 years in. You know, it's been such a valuable course for people. We've had 100, I mean, we can't get better than 100% satisfaction rating. You're doing something right. Also 94% recommendation rating. So it's really nice to kind of see that people really value this course, really like it. And some of the outcomes have been amazing. We've got a couple of examples here just to kind of highlight, but these are some of many actually. So Kate Stevenson, you may have even heard of Kate. She's quite well known now within the sector. You know, she said, thanks to this course, I've just secured a dream job as head of communications for a UK-based conservation charity. I've been able to perform confidently both at work and interview stage, drawing directly upon the learning from the course. How amazing is that, Lloyd?
That's brilliant. No, and there's so many. I know you're going to come on to another one who I work with almost daily, but just the feedback you get from people, but also just me learning from them in terms of their jobs. I find it really fascinating, giving the feedback on the tasks and talking to people and seeing what they're doing day to day, which often blows me away. So yeah, love working with these people.
Yeah, likewise. And I think Kate now, actually, she's moved on to another communications role. She's now director of comms for another organization. Yeah, and the other person that you now know very well is Mickey Tillett. Yeah, so Mickey did our course a few years back now. And she said, you know, thanks to my participation in the comms for conservation projects course, which is now the certificate in conservation communications, I've just started as communications manager for the World Cetacean Alliance. I'm thrilled to be starting the career and very grateful for your guidance and support along the way. That was particularly to you, Lloyd, as well. So yeah, it's really nice to kind of see these people flowing through in their careers, progressing in their careers beyond. They've both gone into communication specific role, but so many people that we teach and train use it as a core part of a kind of wider kind of skill set, a wider role that they're involved with. Oh, so yeah, what are the key dates? Well, you can see here on screen. Okay, so our communications, if you do want our support and you do want us to help and support you through your learning, the key date for enrollment is this Friday. Okay, the course closes this Friday, the 27th. So you've got, you know, what's that, 3 or 4, maybe 5 days to enroll if you want to join in. We'd love to have you in one of our cohorts. The course then starts as of Saturday, the 28th. Okay, and you will then have access to that training for as long as you are in the program. Okay, so yeah, we'd love to have you in it. You can see there the two links there on screen. It's our website /communications for the foundation course, or it's /communications-strategy for our strategy course. And I even have a fancy QR code to share as well. Let me let me figure out how to show that. I've got too many buttons to press here. Let's take that one off, and we're going to go to Q&A in a second too. So let me share our QR code. So if you are a QR-friendly person.
There it is. Big reveal.
There you go. The big build-up, and it came. Yeah. So that will take you to our foundation level course, which for most people is the right place to start. If you already have advanced communication experience, okay, you want to go that extra step and go a bit deeper, then the communication strategy advanced course would be probably more relevant to you. Ooh, right, I'm going to take a little breather and a little drink. Yeah, and really, it's over to you. So thank you, everyone who shared all your time with us here this evening. I can see there's still 154 of you watching and listening. So it's been really nice time to get together. We are going to hang around here. Yeah, we're just a little bit over time, but we're going to hang around for another sort of 10 or so minutes. We're here to answer any questions you might have. I'm going to turn the chat on, and I'll show the chat here on screen too. So if you do have a question, do feel free to drop your question into the chat. Yeah, someone knows Dave Johnson. Yeah, absolutely. It's a small world, isn't it? Yes. I don't know what AIP. Tell me what AIP is, please, Maria. But yeah, WCS. So he is the Director of Development for Education at the Wildlife Conservation Society, isn't he? And such a nice guy. And he's been on our podcast too. But he's our now expert in residence for this too. So we're really pleased to have him on here too. Ginger's asked a question. Thank you, Ginger. So keep your questions short, like Ginger, which is lovely, like a sentence or so. What would you say is the best way to get connected for future careers? Oh, that's quite a broad question. Interesting. Best way to get connected for a future career?
From my point of view, I guess when I moved over to conservation, I made a real point of, I guess, not bugging people, but trying to connect with as many people on things like LinkedIn as possible and ask questions. And I think certainly from my experience, when I asked those questions, I'd probably say 90% of the people responded, and getting that insight. And many people, ask these questions of me now on LinkedIn, and I'm always responding because I think it's really valuable. Just those little nuggets of information can be really valuable. So connecting with people online, through things like LinkedIn, where I think most people in conservation understand it can be a challenging road, so they're willing to give a bit of time. So I would always say, connect with someone, ask them a relevant question. Don't just say, how do I get a job? Ask them a relevant question about their role or about their experience, and I'm sure they'll give you a decent response.
Yeah, we're a global, welcoming, friendly family, and I truly believe that. Yeah, we share the passion for conservation, and often if you ask questions and want support, you often get it. People are here to throw the ladder down, as I sort of say, help people who are coming along behind them. So don't be shy, make friends. Don't see it as networking, you're making friends. Other questions? I'm just going to throw some questions up here on screen. Okay, so what's the best way to promote wildlife and conservation podcasts? We've not talked a lot about podcasts. I've got a couple of podcasts. I really enjoy it. I think it's a nice medium.
You're probably more experienced than me, Nick. So maybe you should answer this one.
Best way to promote? Well, there's a few ways of doing it, I guess. I mean, I'm not a pro at promoting podcasts, despite running them. One is to be a guest on other people's podcasts. I think it's a really way to kind of get your message out there and to connect to exactly the right audience. So if you can kind of do a guest swap, so find other people in your niche who have a similar podcast, and can you go on their podcast and they come on yours and do an audience swap? I think that's a really good way to quickly get your name out there and to get yourself in front of all the right people. Yeah, so that's probably a quick, easy win, I think, really, that can kind of get yourself out there. Yeah. I saw another question as well. I just want to kind of go back to that one. It's the Advanced Inquiry Program. Thank you, Marissa, as well. Yeah, for answering what that was about, Dave. Ernest, I think it is. Yeah, when is the environmental education course coming? Okay, that's the Dave Johnson thing. Yeah, so that would be, I think it's around August time this year. We're working towards that timeline at the moment. It might be ready a little bit sooner, but keep your eyes open, and we will be doing a webinar on that as well. So a little bit later on. I'm going to pick that one there. Thank you very much. Oisin Fogarty. I hope I got your name right, 155. How do I even begin this career pathway post a university master's? Yeah, so really it feels to me about career planning. Like once you finish your master's, how do you then enter your career and get that first job, which is something that we support a lot of people through here at Conservation Careers. I think there's a few things. I mean, a master's is really good. Conservationists are an educated bunch, something like 65% plus people have masters or more. So yeah, I'm not saying you need a master's. We've talked a lot about that here, on webinars, but it does help you to stand out from the bunch and show that you kind of know your stuff. But beyond that, you need to really get some clarity as to the career is you're targeting. Like, what direction are you going in? What are you really interested in? And very briefly, I haven't got all the time, but we talk about, what role do you want to do? Do you want to be a communicator, a fundraiser, a project manager, and so forth? And we see sort of 11 big roles, and you'll find them listed on our website. So that's one part of a career. What role do you want to play? The other side is like, what cause do you want to play? What do you really care deeply about that you'd like to tackle? Combining those together kind of creates a bit of a niche. And from that, you can understand, what are the skills and knowledges and experiences you need to become really employable for that thing. So get some clarity as to the direction you want to go in. Okay, then understand what gaps you need to fill to become employable for that. And it's likely that you'll find that communications is a useful skill and a gap you might want to fill. Yeah, so thinking about that. And I think a really good example of like a cause and a role brought together is Lloyd. It's marine communications. Really clear. The cause you care about, Lloyd, is marine conservation, dolphin cetaceans, and other things, I'm sure. And the role you're playing is to help that cause is communications. And that helps to kind of create that clarity and niche that you might be looking for.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Nick, if you don't mind, I think, because a lot of it, I can see some questions on here about how do you gain experience, and those, and I'm always asked that. It's like, how do I gain experience? How do I get on the job ladder? And I think for me, and this isn't an easy path for everyone, but as you know, Nick, I did a lot of volunteering at the start of this process. Maybe I was in a different situation to other people because I'd just come out of a job and I had more time, but I felt that putting that time in terms of volunteering in a way that I would basically be doing a job without getting paid, to build experience, make network connections, to actually allow employers to see how good I was at a role. That worked for me. And every volunteer role I did turned into paid work. I'm not saying that works for everyone, but sometimes I think, offering your skills to an organization for free, if you want to call it that way, volunteering, you want to call it that way, for a set period on a set campaign or a set project, allows you to build that experience and make those connections. I think that's really useful. It's not ideal, don't get me wrong, but it worked for me, and I think it can work for others too.
Yeah, it shows people can do something rather than saying you can do something. It's the evidence that they're looking for. Yeah, it's more challenging for some than others, depending on time and money, but it absolutely can be really beneficial. Yeah, Griff. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the talk. You can't see anything there. It's quite a long question. I'll read it out maybe. Thank you. My question is, are there studies or surveys in what kind of conservation messaging works for different demographics? Yeah, you can see most of the question there. Yeah, we've had great success with integrating humor into our forest restoration messaging. What are your thoughts on messaging styles that are emerging and how effective they are?
Yeah, I think absolutely that. And we said earlier in the conversation, you probably missed it, Griff, but I think the key to getting that messaging across is understanding your audience. Absolutely. So in our foundation course, we actually talk about targeting audiences for the dolphin research project that I'm involved with. And we actually discovered that a big percentage of our audience was females over 50. So we started messaging that audience in a specific way, and we found more engagement that way. So had we not have known that, had we just guessed they were 20 somethings, then we would have wasted our time in a different message. So I think absolutely, humor can work for the right message, for the right audience. Sorry, absolutely. If it's the right audience, why not? But I think understanding your audience is crucial, and trying to work that out through things like followers on your Facebook profile or your Instagram profile, or your TikTok, whatever. Looking at those demographics of those followers on your website as well. Free analytics allow you to see ages and locations. That can really give you a good guideline into how you should be messaging your campaign.
Yeah. If you're interested in that also, it's a bit old now, but I think it's still very relevant. There was a great study called Branding for Biodiversity. If you Google Branding for Biodiversity, it talks about different styles of messaging and what tends to work well. And in summary, from what I can remember, they talked about, kill the extinction message. I thought was quite good in itself. Like doom and gloom tends to kind of disengage people and we bury our heads. What works quite well for conservation is, I think it's what you're referencing here as well, Griff, is like positive messages, hopeful messages, linked to action. So inspire us and tell us what to do. Yeah, so inspiring us might be Humor, yeah, in forest restoration, brilliant, yeah. And then linking that to like a simple action that someone can actually do. And I think Earth Hour kind of encapsulates that quite well too. It's very hopeful, it's very uplifting. We all remember the Ed Sheeran music, right? And then what are you wanting people to do? Spend 60 minutes to do something, for the environment, something positive. And that could be turning the lights off, it could be something else. Yeah.
Yeah, and offering different actions as well. Sorry, I know we're short on time, Nick, but offering different actions. We find this with the Dolphin Project, so people say, how can I help you? Well, you can sign this petition, you can donate, you can volunteer, you can get involved. There's different levels of engagement, and that's what really helps people. Right. Well, for example, we run boat trips. So I've done all your boat trips. How else can I help? Okay, so maybe you could do some training, or maybe you could do this, if you offer people opportunities, they will get involved. If you don't, they won't. Simple as that, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I can see a question here from Marissa that someone else loves, so I'm referencing it now because it's standing out. Okay, so what type of jobs for volunteering or interning would be good to begin with? Yeah, would you recommend any organisation that you're interested in, or look for the role? Yeah.
Well, I can give you my experience, which is I just approached organizations that I was really interested in and said, this is what I can do. Can I help you? I guess that was as simple as I made it. I guess, again, I'm coming from an experience background, so I'm a little bit different, but that was how I went. I actually went to the Dolphin Project that I now help run, and I said, look, I have comms skills. Can you make use of a comms person? And they happened to have their comms person leave a couple of weeks earlier, so it was just one of those moments, and I've never left. But that, you can still do that if you have an approach. Say, look, I'd love to help WWF with Earth Hour, or maybe a smaller organization might be a better place to start. But I think if you research an organization, identify a need, and then go to that organization and say, I've got these skills, can I help you with this project that I've researched, and can identify that you need this help, then I think most of the time they'll at least respond to you because you've put the effort in, and hopefully it will give you an opportunity to prove yourself. So that's the way I did it. But there are internships. Obviously, Nick is much better placed to respond to those types of opportunities because you have an amazing resource in terms of jobs and volunteering opportunities. But for me, that worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just going to keep going on as well. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. I think we'll start up in a few minutes as well, because I realise we are overrunning. We appreciate all the time you spent with us here this evening. It's been loads of fun. A couple of quick questions that I'm seeing here in front of me to handle. Simon, for times, if you join CC Pass, you have access to all the courses at any time. You have access to all our career courses at any time. So the Kickstarter, we have an accelerator as well for more career development. We have public speaking, we have applications, how to apply for conservation jobs. We have a scholarships masterclass that's going to come live very soon as well. So if you're looking to secure money for scholarship, for research, particularly for master's programs as well, you have access to all them anytime. Our certificated courses, so communications, project management, fundraising, marine rewilding, conservation education, community-based conservation. I think that's the lot at the moment. They are on a 6-monthly cycle. So this month you can access communications from this Saturday. So if you join CC Pass, we'll unlock that from this Saturday. Away you go. Next month we'll be unlocking project management. Will be starting a cohort around that. So all the dates are published. So it's a monthly kind of rolling calendar. Yeah. So across 6 months you'll have access to all the trainings. Essentially, that's another way of putting it. Yeah. So there's a schedule for certified. All the career stuff is, all our career courses is open access anytime. Yeah. Okay. Yes, and I'm just going to try and pick one more. Is there any questions standing out to you, Lloyd, that you think we should have handled that we've missed?
I think you've answered a few of them already. There was, I think there's there at the top there. How often would you reach out to connections without bugging them? Because I mentioned reaching out.
Yeah, just showing that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think ultimately, if you don't get a response with a couple of reminders, then it's probably best to leave. But I think in most cases, I found, as I said, most people responded within 2 requests or so. So I think even if it's like, happy to set a chat with you next month, this month is a bit busy, and that's sort of great. So yeah, I wouldn't bug them. But as I said, Nick and I have both had this experience where people are generally very open to at least giving you some feedback or guidance, and that's worked well.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Yes, the slides. I don't think we'll make the slides available, Larry. I saw you asked that. But this recording will be available. Like, so if you go to our YouTube channel, it'll be recorded. In fact, you can view it again right now, I think already. So yeah, So I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. Thank you everyone for sharing your time with us here this evening. We really appreciate having you with us. It's been really fun. Lloyd, huge thanks for kind of coming on, spending your time with us this evening and sharing all your knowledge and being so supportive of students that are going through the program too. It's been really nice. If you're interested in knowing more about our communication certificates, do check out all the details on our website. I say enrollment is open until Friday. We'd love to welcome you into the training to kind of lead you through these core skills that employers are looking for. And whether you join us or not, please do think about communication skills, and the importance in your career, how it can help your career, how it can help move you forwards, and how it can help us really kind of tackle the biodiversity crisis we're seeing around the globe. We're really hopeful we can do this, but we need to kind of upscale our efforts really quickly. Yeah. Thank you for all your lovely comments. We can see them dropping in here. Bradley, Justin, Leah, Michelle, Larry, Sarah. Yeah, it's been really nice having you with us all the way to the end. It's been really good. Lloyd, it's been fun.
Thank you, Nick. No, and as always, and as I probably didn't explain very well, I actually started on the Kickstarter. So when Nick mentioned that, I thought, oh yeah, I did that about 7 years ago. So it's, it can definitely lead you in the right place. And I recommend Nick and Christy and the whole team very highly because they helped me massively. I wouldn't be where I am today without Conservation Careers. And that's not because Nick's paying me, because he's not. So it's honest truth. So yes.
Thank you. And I do pay you a bit, but yes.
Yeah.
But not for the promotion. I really appreciate that. It's very kind words. Thank you. Right. Well, wherever you are, thank you once again. We're going to end the stream here. You stay safe, so well. If you want to come back and watch this anytime, we're on the YouTube channel. But until next time, we are doing another webinar next time. You'll find the details on our website. You'll also find the details on our LinkedIn pages too. Yeah, and I think it'll be a Facebook event there set too. And also on our Facebook Live channel, you'll see it scheduled for next month. We'll be talking about project management skills and how important they are and what these things are called the conservation standards. So watch this space. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye, everyone.